Out today, well, not out today, but Romney's tax plan, an analysis of it from the Brookings Institute and the Urban Institute. They formed the Tax Policy Center. They look at this stuff. Of course, Romney's people calling that a giant liberal think tank. So what do you expect? So there's no evidence whatsoever, that they are. No one in their right mind thinks that. But they have come down pretty hard on Romney's flat 20% tax and what that would mean to anybody except the richest Americans. For which it would mean, in a not surprising development, more great news.
Yeah, so let me just break this down real quick, some of the parts of the tax proposal that Romney has so you get a sense of it. So you reduce taxes by 20% across the board, right? So now that helps some in the middle class, but they're going to get hurt by other things that we'll explain in a second. But it helps the guys at the top of the bracket tremendously. Estate tax, they get rid of it entirely. So that only applies to the richest of the rich with estates over $5 million. They lower corporate tax rates. They, it's the alternative minimum tax proposal that, is not controversial, but is another tax cut. And the list goes on and on. If you're making under $200,000, it takes away capital gains and dividends taxes. So these massive tax cuts, some of them seem like they help the middle class, but as you're about to see in their entirety, they do not.
And so to eliminate that, and I believe I called it a flat tax, but you're right, it's a 20% tax cut across the board. But so what the Institute did, what the Tax Policy Center did is say, we are going to make this the most progressive 20% tax cut there is. So we're going to give Mitt Romney every break as we study this as possible. Right? We're going to take away every single loophole there is for the rich, all of them, and then see if, as Mitt Romney says, it won't do any damage. But before we get to those numbers, I thought we'd take a look at sort of just where the rich are anyway. And it turns out they're in great shape.
Oh, really?
This group called the other 99%. They've asked a very relevant question that I think, every campaign you're always asked, are you better off now than you were 4 years ago, right? So they've said the question should be phrased like this: are you better off than you were before the Bush tax cuts?
That's such a great question. Who thinks that, other than the millionaires? Who thinks they're better off than they were before the Bush tax cuts? So, and because of the Bush tax cuts.
With that as your backdrop, Romney's 20% cut, he says, will be it'll help every middle-income Americans. That's his big push for it. So again, the Tax Policy Center gives every possible break they could to middle-income Americans, right? The loopholes they take away as many as conceivably possible, the most progressive tax possible. Here's how the Romney tax cuts looks, again, according to the Tax Policy Center. If you're making between $200,000 and $500,000 a year, your tax break would be $1,800 extra a year. Mm-hmm. Reasonable if you're going to give people a tax break. Okay. If you make between $500,000 and $1 million, it goes up to $17,000. Oh, and look at that. If you make over $1 million a year, the average would be a tax break of $87,000 a year, extra money for you.
Now, this is on top of the Bush tax cuts. So in the Bush tax cuts, millionaires had already gotten, for example, a $110,000 tax break. Now they're going to get another $87,000 tax break.
And Romney's big claim here is that this will be revenue neutral. Mm-hmm. The grand total of all those tax breaks to people making between $200,000 and an infinite number of million, right, is $86 billion a year in tax cuts for those people. $86 billion a year.
Okay, and by the way, those tax cuts wind up with a deficit over a 10-year period, creating an extra deficit of $3 trillion. So that's adding $3 trillion in essence to our debt. Okay.
He says it'll be revenue neutral, so obviously then somebody else is going to have to make up that revenue.
That's exactly right. So now the thing is, in order for it to be revenue neutral and to give Mitt Romney the benefit of the doubt, what are you going to do? You're going to take away all the deductions, right? And he has been vague about what deductions he would take away. But if you're going to be fair to his program, you make these assumptions on the home mortgage deductions, the child tax credits, etc. So what does that lead you with? Well, somebody's got to pay the bill, and you're going to be shocked to find out it's you. Okay, if you're making under $200,000, which, by the way, is 95% of us.
95%.
You're actually going to get a tax increase.
The average will be, and this is the final graphic we have, graphic 4, very simple. This is for everybody, rounded up. Obviously, it breaks down. They break it down more specifically. We don't want to bog you down too much with numbers, but it comes to an average of $500 more a year, about $500 for everyone making less than $200,000 a year.
So understand this. 95% of us have to take $500 out of our pocket on average and give it to the rich so they can get another $87,000 for millionaires. Now, think about it this way. And that's if you're making $1 million, okay? Now, if you're making, as Mitt Romney did in 2010, over $20 million, he made over $21 million. Some rough math. You times it by 20, the 87,000, okay? We're looking at
About
a
1.7.
$1.7 million tax cut for himself. Mitt Romney takes $500 out of your pocket and gives himself a $1.7 million tax cut. That's unbelievable. Who could run for president and say, hey, you middle class schmucks, 95% of you, pay me.